reports that the Giants have identified a top target and that, that top target does make a lot of sense. Also, Buster Posey, did he really say that he prefers RBIs over OPS?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show since just prior to the 2019 season, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And coming up on today's show, like I said, the first thing I want to get into is that we got rumors. We got rumors about the Giants. And one of them, one of the things I was going to talk about before we have this concrete rumor about a specific player the Giants are targeting, per these reports, is that Buster Posey stated the obvious and stated something that Farhan Zaidi had said before Farhan Zaidi was fired, which is that they're seeking a shortstop. So Posey was pretty point blank when he was asked about seeking a shortstop. So Shayna Rubin of the San Francisco Chronicle said Posey, speaking with reporters in San Antonio, where the GM meetings are happening right now, said the Giants are looking for a shortstop. Said Fitzgerald did a good job there last year, but can play multiple positions. And then they get into Luciano as well. But so that was the, shortstop conversation that we were going to have. And then also it's worth pointing out that MLB Trade Rumors did their annual top 50 free agents with predictions, and all of them, 3 contributors, I think, had Willy Adames. That all of them picked the Giants as the team that would sign Willy Adames. But it's a different shortstop that we're hearing about right now. Mark Feinsand of MLB.com reporting yesterday that, quote, according to a source, Ha-Seong Kim has already generated, quote, lots of interest, end quote, in the early days of free agency, while a second source said the Giants are focused on signing the 29-year-old. The Brewers have also been connected to Kim, but the Giants appear to be the club most interested in the infielder, end quote. And so that is pretty concrete and also not surprising at all. Ha-Seong Kim makes a lot of sense for the Giants. A shortstop, they've Farhan Zaidi said it, Buster Posey said it, I'm saying it, they need a shortstop. They needed a shortstop. I definitely just wouldn't. Clearly, we definitely saw the defensive shortcomings of Marco Luciano. Tyler Fitzgerald did do a nice job, but I wouldn't just lock down that position to him. And then there are some good options here in free agency, including Willy Adames and Kim. And so Ha-Seong Kim and Willy Adames are different players, pretty different profiles. One of the things that we're going to get into in the next bit of the show is talking about what Posey, is prioritizing. We got some comments from him, actually some very interesting and telling comments from him, but a little teaser on that. He talked about run prevention, essentially, pitching and defense. And for Willy Adames, his defensive metrics kind of waned last year. And so you do look at that, and I don't know, I don't watch 162 Brewers games a year to be able to tell you what happened there, but always in the plus in defensive runs saved, and then suddenly minus 16 defensive runs saved last year. Outs above average had him at plus 16 in 2023 and then down to 0 in 2024. So clearly something went on there. I'm not exactly sure what, but not the best time for Adames to have that kind of year defensively. Adames is 29 years old, he turned 29 on September 2nd. Kim is 29 years old, and he turned 29 on October 17th. And so Kim is just a month and a half younger than Adames. And the thing about Ha-Seong Kim is that he did not regress defensively. What he dealt with was an injury, a season-ending injury that he eventually underwent surgery to repair a small tear in the labrum of his right shoulder, and he injured this shoulder in mid-August while diving back into first base during a game in Colorado. So, it wasn't like he just injured his shoulder from making a bunch of throws. To me, he's got one of the cleanest throwing arms in the game. Like, it is a joy to watch Ha-Seong Kim play defense. He's also, graded out, not just graded out, but he's an above average runner as well. In his major league career, he's stolen 78 bases and been caught 17 times. 2021, we can kind of throw it out. He kind of struggled in his first year in the majors, and since then, double-digit homers and steals every year, including 38 stolen bases in 2023. Strikeout rate in the teens each of the last 3 years. And so, a guy that makes a lot of sense for the San Francisco Giants, and also Korean-born and friends with Jung-Hoo Lee. And I think Jung-Hoo Lee or Ha-Seong Kim was like the first person Jung-Hoo Lee called when he signed with the Giants. He also talked to Ha-Seong Kim about playing for the Giants and what Ha-Seong Kim knew of the Giants, and playing for Bob Melvin, because Ha-Seong Kim played for Bob Melvin. And Kim had a lot of good things to say about Bob Melvin. And so it just kind of makes too much sense here. And it is worth pointing out that Kim is expected to miss possibly some time, maybe even a month at the beginning of the 2025 season after undergoing this surgery. It's the same thing for Jung-Hoo Lee, right? A labrum tear with the surgery. So, that's interesting. But nevertheless, I mean, we're talking about Willy Adames is more of a guy who's going to possibly hit you 30 home runs. I mean, just looking at it, Willy Adames' strikeout rate in his career is 27%. Isolated power is about 200. And for Ha-Seong Kim, career strikeout rate is 19%, 18.8. And the isolated power is 137. So you're getting more contact. You're getting less power with Ha-Seong Kim, but you're getting more speed and base running ability, and probably better defense. Although I don't, last year was a weird year for Willy Adames defensively, and so I don't know exactly what to make of it. But for Kim, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to look at his percentiles up here on Baseball Savant, and outs above average, he's always been 82nd percentile or better. It was 82nd percentile his first year, then 94th, then 95th, then 85th. Good arm strengths every year as well. Really good chase rates, doesn't chase out of the zone, and good speed, 76th percentile or better every year since he's come into the major leagues. But, not necessarily a ton of thump, but a guy who makes a lot of contact, hits lefties really well, and holds his own against righties. So I would be thrilled to have Ha-Seong Kim on the San Francisco Giants. It's less of like a star power signing, but I would almost be just as happy with Ha-Seong Kim as I would be with Willy Adames, especially considering the question marks that I see when I look at what the heck happened defensively with Willy Adames last year. So coming up in just a minute, we will wrap up that conversation and then get into what Buster Posey said. Does he really value RBIs over OPS? Like, that is very very anti kind of new school thinking, which is so pervasive in the sport now. So this would be kind of a big deal if what he said was a big deal. So we'll discuss what he said in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is also brought to you in part by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, Ellie, or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that is some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be replaced in your showroom placed, not replaced, in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, code LOCKEDONMLB for 10% off your first purchase. All right, here we go. We're going to get into some comments that Buster Posey made. I do want to wrap up the conversation on Ha-Seong Kim and how it ties in with what Posey said here. So, this was, written about a lot, but I basically copied and pasted almost all of an entire article by Andrew Baggerly in The Athletic for content here, because there was that much that was relevant, because Buster Posey is brand new to this job. So anything that he says is worth listening to at this point, because we don't know how he's going to what he's going to prioritize, and on and on and on. There's a million things we don't know. And so what stood out the most, I bolded among my 15 paragraphs that I copied and pasted. So this is a quote from Posey. He says, "How does a player feel like they're valued? It's playing time and how they're paid, right? If the industry is paying a guy to have an 850 OPS, but he only drives in 40 runs, well, where's the incentive to drive in runs if it doesn't matter? So the challenge from my perspective is that driving runs does matter to me. There's probably a lot of people who'd disagree with me and say RBIs are all based on luck, right? I disagree with that," Posey said. He continues, "I don't think it's totally context dependent. I think it's a mindset and a want to." And then Posey goes on, "But how do you convince your players to do that when they'd say, well, if I drive in 80, but I've got a 770 OPS instead of an 850 OPS, am I going to be penalized for that? So that's what I see as the crux of the issue." end quote. And so actually, I'm going to continue and then give my analysis. He says, quote, and again, via Andrew Baggerly, quote, hopefully, this is Posey speaking, hopefully we can make some headway in the minors. If we set standards, whatever we decide those standards are going to be, then you're going to move up if you're doing these things. And if you're not going to move up. That'll be the fun part to piece that together, end quote. So, yeah, I mean, he does go on to say, like, we do value analytics and something. Again, I copied and pasted a million things, but this whole thing, I mean, he's given specific examples. I know he's probably speaking off the cuff a little bit, but an 850 OPS versus a 770 OPS, that's a pretty drastic difference. We're talking 80 points of OPS, almost 10% worse for this second player that he's talking about. So, I've applied for some jobs with teams. I did not plan on mentioning this. This just popped into my mind in the past, and gotten pretty close to working with some teams. And one of the first things that they often send out is like a questionnaire, and they ask questions like this, like, which player would you rather have? And they'll put things like this: someone with an 850 OPS and 80 RBIs, and 40 RBIs, or someone with a 770 OPS and 80 RBIs. And the quote unquote correct answer, at least as far as I can tell, because I typically get past this initial round, is the guy with the 850 OPS with fewer RBIs, because generally speaking, RBIs are context dependent. I mean, Posey is saying, I don't think it's totally Baggerly actually inserts these words like in parentheses. So Posey said something different. I don't know exactly what Posey said, but this is what he meant was, I don't think that it is totally context dependent. I think it's a mindset and a want to. So like any issue, I think there's room for middle ground here, and not to be like either for this or against this. And it's just not how the industry is being run right now. And so that is what I've said about Buster Posey being president of baseball operations, is that it's potentially just a drastic departure from not just Farhan Zaidi, but from the entire industry. And so, you're talking about saying we're okay if you have an 80-point lower OPS as long as you're doing these things that drive in runs. Now, in a vacuum, like, of course, driving in runs is the name of the game. Everybody wants those runs to be driven in. Everybody. But the research that I personally haven't poured over every bit of the research in anticipation of this podcast today, but essentially RBIs are indisputably largely context dependent. No, are they 100% context dependent? Of course not. Are players who are more prone to strike out more likely to fail to get a runner in from third with less than 2 outs? Of course they are. Although, sometimes putting the ball in play, say it's first and third, 1 out, what if you hit into a double play? Whereas striking out would only be 1 out. Putting the ball in play could sometimes be a worse outcome because you could get 2 outs. So there's all kinds of things we could get into about this, but yeah, okay, so let's just hypothetically say you play on a team that has the lowest on base percentage in the majors, and you're the same player, you're Buster Posey, and then you play on a team that has the highest on base percentage in the majors. You're simply going to have more runs batted in when you're on the team with more guys that get on base, because if there's nobody ever on base when you come up, You literally cannot drive anyone in but yourself. The only time you're going to get an RBI is if you hit a home run. Whereas if you come up with the bases loaded every single time you come up to the plate for like 600 plate appearances, you're going to have like a ton of runs batted in. So obviously context matters, but to what extent does it matter? That's more up for debate. And I that's kind of what I took away from this, but it's a pretty extreme thing to say in today's game by a president of baseball operations. I don't really expect the average fan or the average kind of radio host or even podcaster or in some cases still writer to think this way, the way that I'm kind of pushing back on what Posey is saying to an extent. But it is very noteworthy to hear a president of baseball operations make these kinds of comments in today's game. That being said, Posey played. He played under Bruce Bochy and before the game dramatically changed, and he played under Gabe Kapler and Farhan Zaidi. And I will point out, as I have before, that when Posey only played the one season under Kapler, wasn't there in 2020 because he opted out of the COVID year. But in 2021, there was a whole philosophical change that he took part in, because part of what he said, and I didn't get to the exact quote, I copied and pasted too much that I can't even find it as I looked through it. But basically an emphasis, what he's talking about is trying to put the ball in play, extending the strike zone so you don't strike out in these situations, and quote unquote just put the ball in play. That's largely what he's talking about. But when Kapler was here and the whole new coaching staff and that offensive group, and really Kapler was the voice, so I don't know I'm assuming this is what the hitting coaches preached as well. But Kapler would always say, we want our hitters to be especially patient on pitches they can't drive and especially aggressive on pitches they can drive. So basically, if it's in your wheelhouse, take a huge cut at it. And if it's not, don't even swing. And Posey, on the other hand, is implying with these comments that is not going to be their philosophy. And so when you look at the departure of Justin Veely, they wanted him to come back. They welcomed him back, which is interesting because Posey has this different offensive philosophy, apparently. And the departure of Pete Patella, the departure of Michael Schwartz, their director of analytics, director of baseball analytics. I'm sorry, I don't exactly remember his title. But yeah, director of analytics, Michael Schwartz. It's just very interesting. And so I know a lot of you listening are going to be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. RBIs are everything. But don't be fooled. The game has changed, right? You know that you may disagree with it, and I think that's fine. That's totally fine. I'm just saying the game, please don't deny that the game has shifted away from a focus and an emphasis on RBIs. And yet Posey's here saying, I am not shifting away from that emphasis on things like that. And he did say that's what we're up against, because the players, if they truly are, Posey is correct. Posey is acknowledging that the game has shifted away from this, because he's saying these guys don't get paid by the RBI. They get paid by the OPS. And it's not just OPS. It's more advanced stuff than that. But OPS, he's right, is more valued than RBIs. Because the theory is that, it leads to run creation. It is more associated with run scoring than many other metrics, So, it's a rate stat. RBI is a counting stat. You can't really compare the two directly in that way. Of course, when an RBI occurs, a run has scored. Whereas with OPS, it doesn't there's no guarantee that a run scores, but like the theory is that the higher the OPS, the more it plays out over the course of 162, the more runs you'll generate. The higher your team OPS, the more runs your team is going to score, is like basically what that comes down to. But Posey's saying something a little different. I mean, imagine saying this at a team-wide level. If we have an 850 OPS as a team versus a 770 OPS as a team, to try to make the argument that the 770 OPS team might have more runs scored at the end of the year is tough for me to believe. And so maybe he made too large of a gap in his little off-the-cuff example, but that's hard. That would be hard to achieve. And so this was a very interesting comment. So have at it in the comments section on these Buster Posey comments. I'm not going to lose sleep over these comments. I'm just along for the ride to kind of witness how this all plays out. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, we got a trade rumor. We have reports actually of a player who's getting some interest from other teams, a player on the Giants. We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Game Time. You know what I love? And it's that time of year. Checking out the Warriors in person playing some basketball. With Game Time, it takes all the stress out of the ticket buying process for me. And with Game Time, it's not just sporting events, it's concerts and shows. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite features of the Game Time app include images from seat views and the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. So, head over to FanDuel.com, look for the most lopsided contest you can find, place that $5 bet, and again, $150 in bonus bets if you win. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, here we go. We're going to get into, I wouldn't call it so much a rumor, but more of a report and then just my thoughts on it. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers, the plan is for tomorrow to do a mailbag, which we haven't done in a long time. I don't think we've done one since Buster Posey took over, and now the offseason is underway. We've got rumors, Ha-Seong Kim, like that. To me, I would put money on the Giants getting one of Ha-Seong Kim or Willy Adames. I would put money on that. So put it in the bank. That's my prediction, is one of those two players will be a San Francisco Giant. And looking like more likely Ha-Seong Kim. And I can understand why. I like both players, though. Anyway, so look out on Twitter for the prompt for the mailbag. But I want to get into this report that comes from Susan Slusser, who says several days ago, quote, "There are a few teams expressing interest in Camilo Doval, I'm told. The talent remains undeniable, and a few teams would consider him for closer role, which he lost to Ryan Walker last year. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. Number one, I don't like the idea of selling low. And so if you're another team and you're expecting the Giants to like give you a discount on Camilo Doval, I'm not buying it because, everything else besides the ERA was kind of, the walk rate shot up, but projections, youth, he's 27 years old. It's one season of struggles versus 3 seasons of pretty much dominance would be the word to describe it. So I'm not in the business of selling low on a player like this who is under team control through 2027. So we're talking 3 more seasons of team control for Camilo Doval. On the flip side, Ryan Walker was so good, and not just in a way that looks unsustainable, but in a way that looks sustainable. Ended up with a 1.91 ERA, 32% strikeout rate, 5.8% walk rate, much more reliably in the strike zone than Doval. 2.60 expected ERA. Doval's expected ERA was 3.36, and the lowest he's ever had is 2.83. So Ryan Walker had a better season than Doval has ever had, even though Doval has been really good. So that's more a testament to how good Ryan Walker was than a knock on Doval. The fielding independent pitching for Walker last year, 252. The lowest Doval has ever had is 277, and that was in 2023. So, I don't want to sell low if I'm the Giants, but also I'm willing to listen because I believe that in Ryan Walker, I have a guy who should go into the 2025 season as the clear favorite for that role because he was just that good. And I mean, he pitched 80 innings as well. Doval's career high, he was 67 2/3 2 years in a row in 2022 and 2023. I don't recommend throwing your relievers 80 innings, but that was kind of just what was needed to get through the season when they were still competitive and competing for trying to stay alive. So anyway, I think the Giants should listen, but I don't think they should sell low. And if you can't find like a really good return at a position of need, someone who immediately makes your team better, then I don't think you should do it because the more good relievers you have, like if you have Ryan Walker and you have Camilo Doval and Doval has a bounce back, and then relievers are volatile. So, and pitchers get hurt. So say Ryan Walker gets hurt or regresses or whatever, it's nice to have Camilo Doval. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing. And I'm not surprised teams are looking to take advantage of you when a player has a down year. They come sniffing around trying to get a good player at a discount. And I don't think the Giants are just gonna sell super low on Doval. So, but at the same time, because of Walker, they should definitely listen on Doval. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance. And thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.